2 Samuel chapter 17. 2 Samuel chapter 17. We've been on this journey with David's life. We're getting towards the end now. We've been with him since 1 Samuel. Well, not with David, but we started in 1 Samuel and 2 Samuel 17. And remember, Absalom, his son, is trying to take the kingdom. God has ordained that David was king after Saul, and Absalom, his son, who he has a fractured relationship with, who, remember, he allowed to come home but hadn't seen him in 2 years. There's a real issue with Absalom and David, and Absalom now has tried to take Israel and tried to come against David and tried to make himself king. And there's this plague coming on, and Hushai is David's man. He acts like he's trying to help Absalom, but he's really David's kind of spy in the camp. And David has prayed. Ahithophel is Bathsheba's granddad. And so obviously there's reasons why he doesn't like David anymore, and you can see why he wants to fight David. And so Ahithophel joins Absalom in this attack of the monarchy to come after David. The problem is, again, if you're coming after David and David's been anointed by God, you're coming after God. And so this was never going to work. And we're going to see again tonight how when we do our own thing or we allow sin to rule us, what kind of stuff happens. Absalom and David are on the outs. They've had problems. They've had issues. And David had prayed, remember in the earlier chapter, David prays that Ahithophel's advice would be, he would stop Ahithophel from giving good advice. Ahithophel is this man who gives great advice. And so David had prayed to God that that advice wouldn't work. Ahithophel comes up with a plan. Hushai, David's man, has come up with a plan. And actually, Ahithophel's plan is the best one. But Hushai comes in and Absalom listens to him. Even though he kind of knows he's that, I thought you were with your father, or with David, my father. And so Ahithophel has given this good advice. Interestingly, how Hushai, and this is really pivotal, how Hushai convinces Absalom is that he says, you lead it. He strokes Absalom's ego. He tells him, we're going to fight David and you're going to lead it. And Absalom likes that. Absalom likes this idea of being this conquering hero. And Hushai says, here's what you do. You go out front, we'll get them. And Absalom's like, that sounds great. I'll be a conquering hero. And so he comes after him. So join us where we are in verse 23. David has escaped. 2 Samuel 17, verse 23. Ahithophel has given advice, and Hushai has given advice. If you ever needed to understand how important it is to have your inner man okay, it's him. Ahithophel, if we're correct and he's Bathsheba's granddad, you can see why he has issue with David. David has slept with his daughter, killed her husband. David isn't this stand-up guy to Ahithophel, right? And God has seemingly what? Now, the problem is God is going to, and we'll see it again, God is really going to discipline David. And David will pay extraordinary payments for his sin. But Ahithophel is ticked off. Ahithophel wants revenge. You see, when you want to take things into your own hands, you've got an issue, right? You've got to let God deal with it. He's got the emotion of David and his granddaughter. You've got all of this stuff going on. And really what Ahithophel wants is, he wants to come at David. He's come up with this plan. He wants to get him. And he's come up with this good plan, this right plan. And Absalom looks at him and says, we're not going to take your plan. And mentally and emotionally, he's done. Look what happens. And this is the sad part. This is what anger and depression and pride and all of these things will lead to. Look at what it says. When Ahithophel realized that his advice had not been followed, he saddled his donkey, went to his hometown, set his affairs in order. So this wasn't a second. This wasn't a split decision. He immediately, when he realizes that Absalom has said, we're not going your way. We're not going to do it that way. And Ahithophel knows it's the best way. Tactically, it's the best way. He says, he saddled his donkey. He went to his hometown. He set his affairs in order. So again, this is not 5 seconds. This is not a rash decision. And then it says, and he what? Hung himself. Think about that. He hung himself. He didn't just hang himself in a in a strop because he didn't get his own way. This has been building. This is what happens when you don't give everything to the Lord. That's why Peter says, cast all your cares upon him because he cares for you. Ahithophel didn't cast his cares on the Lord, and he wasn't sure that the Lord cared for him. You see, when you get angry, when you get bitter, when you get emotional, when you think the world's against you, when you think the Lord's against you, when you look at somebody else and assume they're getting away with it, it winds you up. You see, they're looking at David and they're like, well, what's happening to him? Why is he still around? And God has treated Saul and David a bit differently. Saul lost his kingdom. David didn't. But man, David's going to pay over. And remember what Nathan has said? The sword will never leave your house. His concubines have already been slept with out top on the rooftop in public. Exactly what God said would happen. He lost his child, his young kid. Remember? David has paid and paid and paid. Whatever he thought he was getting out of Bathsheba, it wasn't worth it. And remember, all through it, we said he had these signs. Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Ahithophel, for as wise as he was, has allowed the enemy in. He's crushed his soul. He's depressed. He's discouraged. And again, it's not a second. He goes home. I mean, how bad does it have to be until you organize it all and then you hang yourself? It's not like he just, in a split second decided, I'm just going to go and kill myself. He thought this through. He got all his affairs in order and he killed himself. And that's what happens when you're without hope, when you're without, he kills himself. And this is a direct result of all of this. This is a direct result of Absalom trying to take over. Absalom wants to be king. The problem is God said you're not be king. So you can come against God, you can do what you want. It's not going to work. David has been protected from Saul for 10 years. He's now on the run again. For whatever reason, God has decided that David would be king. And so guess what? David's going to be king. And so it's really sad, all of these things that happen in this story. And so he hung himself, he died there, and he was buried in the family tomb. It's a really sad story, right? Really sad end. Verse 24. David soon arrived at Mahanaim. By now, Absalom had mobilized the entire army of Israel and was leading his troops across the Jordan River. This is so crazy. When God ordains something, you can have armies. You're not going to take God down. Absalom has no right to the kingdom. Absalom is not going to be king. God is not allowing him to be king. And Absalom, David's son. And by the way, the only reason Absalom wants to be king is to get after his dad. Absalom and David have been so messed up in their relationship. Remember, even he goes away for 3 years and he wants to come back. He burns Joab's field, remember? All of this stuff is going on. And look at what it says. David arrived and Absalom had mobilized the entire army. Here, we're going to see in a minute. It's bad enough when you go against the Lord. But when you drag other people with you, it's really bad. Because he is so prideful and so arrogant and so messed up, Absalom is trying to fight against God and fight against the king. You can't do it. You cannot do it. So he mobilizes the entire army. You know what? You could have the whole world come and try and kill David. When God's got his hand on you, guess what? You're as safe as anything. God is not going to allow David to die. God is protecting David. We've seen that over and over and over, and his provision. So this entire army, imagine being conscripted in an army where really you're coming against God. It's not a great assignment. Look at what it says. He was leading his troops across the Jordan River, Absalom. Absalom had approached Amasa as commander of his army, replacing Joab, who had been commander under David. Obviously, he needs a new commander. So he hires Amasa as the commander of his army. Amasa was Joab's cousin. His father was Jether, an Ishmaelite. His mother, Abigail, daughter of Nahash, was the sister of Joab's mother, Zeruiah. Absalom and the Israelite army set up camp in the land of Gilead. Absalom and Israel are going against God. They're trying to kill David. They don't care about anyone else. They just want to kill David because they think if they get David, Absalom will be king and everything will be fine. Look what happens. Verse 27. And here again, you see God's provision and God's protection and God's power. How in the world has David survived this long? Remember Saul yucked spears at him and they didn't get him? They've been on the same mountain and they never ran into each other. David has been, like Saul was relieving himself in the cave and David could have killed him and he didn't. Then he's asleep, Saul, in the camp, and he could have got his head and he didn't. There's been this back and forth, and God has provided for David over and over and over and over again. And look what happens this time. When David arrived at Mahanaim, he was warmly greeted by Shobai, son of Nahash, who came from Rabbah of the Ammonites. And the Ammonites are even helping David. Like, when since did the Ammonites help God's people? You don't see it. And by Machir, son of Amiel from Lodabar, and by, I wish they had easier names, and by Bazileel of Gilead from Rogelim, they brought, listen to this. Here's David with a few men compared to the entire army, right? And when you're in a fight, what do you need? You need courage, you need encouragement, you need supplies, right? I mean, you need supplies. Well, where's he going to get supplies from? Well, all of a sudden, just coincidentally, or maybe it's God, these dudes show up and they start giving out all this stuff. This is God. Look at what it says. He says they brought sleeping mats, cooking pots, serving bowls, wheat, hot barley, flour, roasted grain, beans, lentils, honey butter, sheep, goats, and cheese for David and those who were with him. You imagine, see, you ever had times like that where it looked like it was over and God just stepped in? God just provided. There's no other reason than God just provided it. David couldn't find all of that stuff. David couldn't have bought all of that stuff. Somehow, by God, even the Ammonites are coming to help David. That's not people being nice. That's God directing him. That's how God works. I know where you're going to be. I'm going to bring these people. David hasn't asked for it. David hasn't planned for it. How's he planning to feed his troops? What are they going to do when they sleep? And yet, can you imagine the morale boost that gave them? And God has that way, right, of speaking to you and encouraging you and saying, and basically sometimes, and look, you realize that this stuff is going to come and go, right? Like the nuts, the grain, the sheep, the cheese, it's all going to come and go. Like if you get wrapped up in what God gives you, it'll be good for a minute, and then when it's gone, you're back looking for something else. Here's the deal, though. What those things are saying, what barley and wheat and all of these things are saying is, I'm here for you. I'm with you. I've got your back. It's not that he gave him $10 million, but he gave him serving bowls and flour and grain and beans. And it was basically God standing in front of David and his men and saying, I'm on your side. And if I'm on your side, guess what? You can't lose. And I'm going to, man, how good did those beans and lentils taste? I mean, because they knew that God had given that to them. You know, if God provides $5 for you, maybe it's only $5, but maybe that's the most precious gift you had, because at the right time, in the right way, God showed up and just said, by the way, I got you. And this is amazing. This must have been, you talk about memorial stones in the middle of nowhere, they got all of this stuff. And look at what it says. They gave David all of this stuff, for they said, you must all be very hungry and thirsty after your long march through the wilderness. That's exactly what they were. And God met them, and God provided for them. And the God in the wilderness was like, I got you back. God never changes, right? So when you need something, guess who can give you it? He may not show, if he showed up with sheep and goats, we might be like, yeah. I mean, if God's going to provide something, I'm not sure I want flour and beans and lentils and serving bowls. And serving bowls means get to work, right? I mean, it wasn't like pizza on delivery. They had to do something with it. But all of that, so here's a question. If you're part of David's crew, and all of a sudden sleeping mats and all of this stuff show up, the sheep show up, what's your first question? Who gave us this? Where's this from? And, hold on, who gave us it, and why in the world are they giving it us? This is like they're in a war, right? Like free food might not be, yeah, here, eat this. Oh, yeah. Dead on the floor. But the reason is David realizes, like, this is God. So next time you get discouraged, next time you're hungry, next time you want to whine in my ear, just remember God and what he does. And the thing is, David had no idea the sleeping bags were coming. They just came. That's faith. Tomorrow, when the beans and the lentils, however long that takes to get rid of, guess what? They're going to be in need again. But the same God that showed up one time can show up again. I bet they've never been so excited to get sleeping, Matt. Look at what it says in chapter 18, verse 1. David mustered the men who were with him. In other words, after they slept and after they had stuff, now they're ready to fight, right? God has prepared them. Look at what it says. He sent the troops out in 3 groups, placing one group under Joab, his commander, one under Joab's brother, Abishai, son of Zeruiah. Remember, they're his sister's kids. Joab and Abishai are sons of Zeruiah. Zeruiah is David's sister. And it says, and one under Ittai, the man from Gath. Remember the Philistine guy that showed up last time, that just showed up, and David was like, you can't come fight for us. He's like, I'm going to fight with you, and I'm going to bring my men. And this Philistine shows. I mean, again, Israel and Philistine, that's never a good relationship. But God says this man, and he says, I want to fight with you. Wow. The king told his troops, I'm going out with you. Here's David. So he says, all right, Abishai and Joab and Ittai, you're going to be the 3 commanders. And he's like, but I'm going to go with you. And here's this affinity, and here's the smart. They won't let David go. They won't let David go. Because they know if David dies, they're all dead. David's not going to die because God's watching over this. But they're like, you've got to stay and do whatever you need to do. Send commands, watch out, do whatever, but you're not coming. We're not going to allow you to die. Which is part of God's way of protecting him, right? His men objected strongly. You must not go, they urged. If we have to turn and run, and even if half of us die, it will make no difference to Absalom's troop. They will be looking only for you. If he kills a ton of people, they're not going to be happy. They could kill 80,000 people. And if they don't get you, they need David. Because David is the key to getting Absalom being king. Whilst Absalom can't kill David, David is still king. And so they're like, you got to stay. So imagine. Here's what sin does. Here's what arrogance does, pride does, hurt feelings. Absalom and David should have made up, right? I mean, they've got this family dynamic where they're at odds with one another. When you start getting at odds with one another, how good is that for a family dynamic? I can't invite them to Thanksgiving anymore. If I invite them for Christmas, there's going to be all right, because there's bitterness and jealousy, and there's all kinds of things, right? And really and truly, the word sorry needs to come out from somebody. It's like, I'll apologize when... Or even if someone apologizes, it's not good. I mean, family dynamic, let's not all sit here and act like we're all happy families and nothing's weird. We're all weird. The truth is, if every family had to give an honest account, we'd be like, man, they're nuts. Families are really difficult, right? And Absalom and David are way from where they should be. And Absalom and David have not been close. And it's led, let's face it, the reason Absalom is trying to betray his father is he's emotionally scarred. He's done. He didn't like the way David handled his business, especially with Tamar getting raped and all that. He didn't like any of it. And so he thinks, just like many people have thought, I'm going to get my what? I'm going to get my own back. How many times has that ever worked? Here's what God says, but I'm going to get my own back. It might feel good for a second. Then you realize, you ever ran your mouth and it felt good for a second, then you realized, then the Spirit of God's just like, you need to say sorry for that, man. I keep telling you, sometimes I have text messages, funny ones, but pointed ones, like, oh, I'm going to get you. And just before I hit send, it's like the Lord, like, don't send it. And the one time you do send it, 2 minutes later, you're like, I'm sorry. It's not fun. It seems like it's going to be fun, but it's not. Anyway. So this whole thing has started in this resentment, bitterness, anger. God's not going to fold. God's not going to give you David. And look at what it says. There was a great slaughter. So the battle began in the forest. Listen, even where they start to fight, listen, God is going to win the fight for David. Just know that. Before we start, God is winning this fight. even where they fight. Listen, they fight in this forest. That might seem like coincidence, but God even sets it up where the fight will be. Listen to it. They fight in this forest of Ephraim, and it says, and the Israelite troops were beaten back by David's men. How? How did David's men keep winning? These were elite troops in Israel. Israel outnumbered them. How did David's men, who basically just survived because someone showed up with lentils, how do they keep surviving? The same way you'll survive, God's hand. You might not know where it's coming from. That's why you have to live day by day and not worry about tomorrow. He don't tell you in advance. That's not faith. He's not going to tell you next Thursday supplies are coming. He just wants you to walk with him. He wants you to thank him. He wants you to worship him. And his way, in his time. And by the way, even if God sat down and told you how he's going to take care of things, you wouldn't believe him. I mean, imagine, we need to know what's going to happen. Well, we're going to walk around the walls of Jericho a few times and then they'll just fall over. The Red Sea thing, we're just going to split it. No problem. Food, I'm just going to rain bread from heaven. I mean, even if he told us the truth, we'd be like, that didn't help at all. They're in this forest, and look what happens. They were beaten back by, not the same way. How did David beat Goliath? That was all God, right? There was a great slaughter that day. How many people, hold on, because Absalom lost it, you don't think your life can change other people's? Because Absalom couldn't get over all of that emotional stuff, and the only way you're going to get over that isn't anything else. It's nothing the world offers. You have to give it to Jesus. You have to let the Spirit of God, you can turn to it. You can't deal with that. That's why we came to Jesus in the first place. I can't deal with this. That's why I'm coming to you, right? He couldn't deal with it. He starts off this coup, and how many people die that day? Read it. How many? How many? 20,000 people die because Absalom has started a fight against God. His blood on his hands is 20,000. You imagine being liable for 20,000 men's lives. Why? Because I wanted my own way. Let's be honest. You ever done anything that was purely fleshly and it cost other people? Achan stole the stuff and he was dead in Joshua. He died, his family died, 300 men. It's all a mess. And this isn't hyperbole. 20,000 people dead on the floor. Because God's like, you're not going to fight against me. And by the way, a few thousand in, 10 in, 20, at what point do you stop? I mean, how many men do you have to lose before you realize God's against you? You're going to wait. And listen to what happens. This is amazing. 20,000 people laid down their life. The battle raged all across the countryside. And then what does it say? This is amazing. What does it say next? Someone read it. Keep reading. More men died what? Instead of what? Look at what the Bible says. More men, so more than 10,000, died because of the terrain and the forest. I don't know what that fully means. They were falling down holes. They were getting mugged by trees. A gopher was getting them. Something happened in the forest where God was... Look, when you're fighting against God in the forest, he can use the forest against you. And basically all of these people were in a forest and trees were falling on them. Hamsters were getting them. Rabbits were biting them. I don't know what happened. Foxes, wolves, I don't know. But the forest killed them. Now, there were people killing each other. But the Bible makes it clear that more men died from the forest than they did the fighting. Okay, when all your men are dying without combat, they're not even fighting now. They're not even getting swords out. They're just dying in the forest. At what point should you say, why don't they? Think about this, and this is key. Why do they keep fighting and fighting and fighting? Because either they're scared of Absalom or they think Absalom's going to bless the mess out of them. Like, if I can just kill David, I'm going to be the favorite. If I can kill David, I'm going to be, I'm going to get treated right. And think about the sadness of that. They feared Absalom, and they understood Absalom's blessing more than they feared and understood the blessing of the Lord. In other words, in this contest, either you're going to have the fear of the Lord. That's the only reason to go with David. And you're going to expect God to bless you, which he does with sleeping mats and all other kinds of stuff. Or you're going to go on the wrong side, not fearing the Lord, thinking that Absalom somehow is going to hook you up. 20,000 dead, mostly by God's hand in the forest. It doesn't even tell you what that means. And then look what happens. Look what happens. During the battle, Absalom happened. Well, what does that mean? He didn't just happen, did he? He came and he fought. I missed a whole section, didn't I? Let's go back. Yeah. Let's go back. David mustered the men, verse 1, who were with him. I was like, where's that bit? And appointed generals and captains to lead them. He sent the troops out in 3 groups. I talked about that. Placing one group under Joab, one under Joab's brother, and one under Ittai. His men objected strongly. You must not go. They argued, if we turn and run, and even if half of us die, it will make no difference to Absalom's troop. They'll be looking for you. You're worth 10,000 of us, and it is better that you stay here in the town and send help if we need it. And this is a bit I missed. And if you think that the best plan, then I'll do it. The king answered. So David says, if that's the plan, if that's what you want me to do, I'll stay back. So he stood alongside the gate of the town as all the troops marched out in groups of hundreds and of thousands. That must have been a weird moment for David. Before this fight happened, we're going reverse because I messed it up. But there's 10,000s of, like you were worth 10,000 of us, and all these people start marching out, and David has to stay at the gate. And listen to this, and this is a major part. This is why I knew I messed it up, because we hadn't got there yet. Verse 5, David gave one command, and it's so weird. David hasn't spoke to his own kid for 2 years. He won't go anywhere near him. But look at what the command is. He tells Joab, Abishai, and Ittai, for my sake. This is his one command. For my sake, please, don't do anything to Absalom. Yeah, even though he's after me, even though he wants to kill me, even though he's like enemy number 1, he's like, do not do anything to Absalom. Let him, get him, but don't get him. That's his one request. And the troop, listen to what it says. And all the troops heard it. And he gave this order to his commander. Everybody knew the one rule. Don't kill Absalom. All right. And then we got to where I was. Sorry about that. I just skipped ahead. I was getting excited. And then it didn't make any sense. Then it says, Absalom came upon David's men. That's not coincidence. God has led Absalom straight to David's men. He tried to escape on his mule. No, you can't write this. But as he rode beneath the thick branches of a great tree. Remember what was his glory? Remember he was like perfectly handsome, the Bible says. He was like he was the type of guy you just hated because he was so good looking. And he had this hair, and he cut it once a year or whatever, or however long it was. Look at what it says. The thick branches of great tree, his hair got caught up in the tree. His mule kept going and left him dangling in the air. That's coincidence? Absalom has come against God, and next thing you know, he's dangling in a tree. The problem for Absalom is he ain't dead. Absalom, let's be honest, what do you think Absalom is thinking when he's dangling on a tree? You think he's like begging God for help? You think he thinks this was a good idea? You see, for a while, you think you're getting away with it. But Galatians says, whatever you reap, you'll sow. I mean, whatever you sow, you'll reap. I'm having a bad night. Whatever you sow, you'll reap. God's justice cannot be mocked. And so he's been playing the fool. He's allowed, look, there's reasons why Absalom should be upset with David. David's not perfect. David's been a rough father with Absalom. There's reasons for Absalom to kind of throw a hissy fit, right? But man, you cannot allow the enemy to get a hold of you like this. And Absalom is dangling from a tree. Meanwhile, the one rule that David has is take care of Absalom. Look at what it says. One of David's men saw what had happened, and he goes and tells Joab. Joab isn't the most sane character. He's a bit, if I can kill you, I'm going to kill you type dude. I saw Absalom dangling from a great tree. What? Joab demanded. You saw him there and you didn't kill him. Well, so much for the king's command, huh? Joab is like infuriated. Joab is not interested in. Joab sees Absalom as what? Enemy number one. He's acquired the target and he's just going to kill him. Like, he don't care what David says. That's a problem. You see, that's the problem of having Joab as your commander. He's a bit rogue. He does his own thing. And all Joab can think about is, remember, Joab's field has been burnt. Joab's got some personal vendettas. He says, you saw him and you didn't kill him. And this is really amazing. Whoever this soldier is, one of David's men saw Absalom dangling, knew he could win, but he refused. And he refused for two reasons. He refused because he feared the king, but really in that you're fearing the Lord. And what he understood, what is really funny, he understood that even if he did it, the king would find out and there wouldn't be a blessing in it. Think about that. If you believed that God would find out and there'd actually be no blessing, how much would that change your behavior? If you're about to do something nuts, if you're about to do something that the Lord doesn't want you to do, but you believe he's going to see it, he's going to find out, and then I'm going to pay for it, and actually the blessing that I think I'm going to get, I ain't going to get. Look at what Joab says. This is really interesting. He says, you didn't kill him? I would have rewarded you with 10 pieces of silver and a hero's belt. Joab says, dude, if you had killed him, I'd have hooked you up. I'd have given you 10 pieces of silver, a hero's belt. You would have been the man. The guy's smarter than that. Listen to what he says. I would not kill the king's son for even 1,000 pieces of silver. Think about the loyalty to that. David said, don't kill my son. And he says there's no amount of money that will make me kill his son. That reminds you of a New Testament figure, don't it? Who took the money? Judas. Judas took the money. When the so-called spiritual people came and made him a deal, how much did he sell Jesus out for? 30 pieces of silver. And you know what he ended up doing with that? Bought a yacht and a house and got all the blessings. No, he didn't do. You know what he did with it? He threw it back. You know how much money he spent of the 30 pieces of silver? Imagine selling out Jesus for 30 pieces and not spending one. And the man is smart enough. He's really, and by the way, he shows that he has kind of this understanding of Joab too. Look at what he says. I'm not going to kill him. We all heard the king say to you and Abishai and Ittai, for my sake, please spare young Absalom. And if I had betrayed the king by killing his son, and the king would certainly find out who did it, what does he say about Joab? What does he understand? You yourself would what? He's like, hey, Joab, you can keep your money. The king's going to find out. And by the way, this offer, you're going to be a hero. As soon as David finds out, guess what you're going to do? Yeah. You ever had friends like that? I'll help you. I'll be with you. And then when the cops show up, or when you need, like I'll be with you forever. Yeah, until it gets hot. And the guy's like, Joab, I know who you are. It's really interesting. He's like, you say you'll be with me and you'll bless me. As soon as David finds out, I don't know anything about it. And so he refuses. And he's like, you can keep your money and I don't trust your blessings. We should be that with the enemy. You can keep your stuff and you can keep your blessings. I'm not falling for it. There's someone else much greater and bigger to fear. So David, he's more scared of David and the Lord than he is Joab. And you would think, and this is what's really cool. Read about Joab. We've read about him. He's a hothead. You would imagine if someone defied his order and started talking trash to Joab, that Joab's just going to what? And that's why a lot of people wouldn't say anything to Joab. If I stand up for myself, I'm going to get... But God protects that man. Joab doesn't even fight him. He just walks off. That's a miracle of God. You read about Joab. Joab's a hothead. Now he's going to go and... we'll see what he does in a minute. But this guy gets away. He's out. Look at what it says. Enough of this nonsense. He didn't even argue with the guy. But what does he do? He takes 3 daggers and plunged them into Absalom's heart as he dangles still alive in the great tree. Joab just 3 times, 3 daggers, right in the heart. Absalom surely by now figures out this was a bad idea. I mean, what are the chances of getting hooked on a tree by your hair? And the funny thing is, that was his glory, that was his pride, that was what he loved, and it ended up killing him. Well, him and Absalom and others. Joab. Look at what it says. And 10 of Joab's young armor bearers surrounded Absalom and killed him. So he's dangling. Absalom basically kills him. And then he gets 10 of his young men just to finish him off. So why do 10 young men do what that other man wouldn't do? Because, see, they don't fear David. They don't fear the Lord. They think that Absalom can bless them. You know how much, Joab can bless them. Verse 16, Joab blew the ram's horn, and his men returned from chasing the army of Israel. He blows it. It's over. We're victorious. Ooh. They threw Absalom, and listen to this. We're just about to read it. You know what Absalom did? He didn't have a kid. You know what he did? You talk about insecurity and pride. You know what he does? He builds a monument for himself. You know how much a monument that you built for yourself? I might try that one day out there. There'll be a Pastor Phil monument. We'll just have it right there. I'll build it. It'll be good. That's crazy. But we'll read it. And so Absalom is Absalom is so hurt, he just wants to take over. He just wants to be the man. He builds a monument to himself. Right? That's going to go well. Look at what happens. Look at what it says. Joab blows the ram's horns. His men returned from chasing the army of Israel. They threw Absalom's body where? No burial, no service, no honor, no taps, no flag, no thank yous, nothing. Imagine dying like this. You're dangling from a tree, you're dead, and all they do with you is chunk you in a pit in the forest and place a great heap of stones over it. And all Israel fled to their what? So they lost 20,000. The rest of Israel bails. No, they should know by now, don't get on with God, don't fight against him. And then it says this, look. During his lifetime, Absalom had built a monument to himself in the king's valley. I have no son to carry on my name. He named the monument after himself, and it is known as Absalom's monument to this day. This is what's crazy. This is the irony of it. Absalom's monument was meant to celebrate who? Him. What was it to say about Absalom? How strong, how wise, how smart, how powerful, how wonderful. And now his monument stands? It shows you how strong and powerful and amazing God is and how crazy it is. Really, that monument is a testimony to how great God is and that you should not come against him. That monument is actually now a monument to Absalom's weakness and failure and craziness and God's greatness. You imagine erecting a statue of yourself and then God taking care of you like that. Everyone now that looks at the monument isn't celebrating Absalom. How many kids are like, I want to grow up like Absalom? Nobody wants to go out like that. No one stood in front of that monument and was like, ooh, he's my hero. Hold on. He done messed this all up. But I want you to see that we're not far from that. It all started in here. Your mind and your heart. That's where it started. And he never got it fixed. You don't fix your mind and your heart, you'll do things you never thought you were capable of doing. When your heart hurts, when your mind hurts, when your spirit is jaded, you will do things you never thought you should do or could do or would do. Absalom has had all this stuff, and it ends up, the end, he dangles on a tree and gets 3 daggers in him. Quickly, because we'll have a meeting and I want to say some stuff, but verse 19. the priest Zadok's son Ahimaaz said, "Let me run to the king with the good news that the Lord has rescued him from his enemies." The priest's son wants to run to David with the good news. He's kind of not really thinking this through. That might be good news to everybody else. To David, you don't want to tell David his son is dead. He had one clear instruction. Joab said, no. It wouldn't be good news to the king that his son is dead. You can be my messenger another day, but not today. Joab said to a man from Ethiopia or Cush, "Go tell the king what you have seen." The man bowed and ran off. That's nice of Joab. Send the Ethiopian. Who cares what happens to him? Like, send him and let David deal with it. You notice Joab doesn't want to what?
He's not a teller.
Yeah. And Joab isn't going to be like, by the way, 3 of those daggers, woo. If Joab thought David was going to get excited, Joab would have sure told him what was going on. Joab knows. And look what it says. But Ahimaaz continued to plead with Joab, "Whatever happens, please let me go." He's adamant he wants to go and tell David. You ever had people bug you so much you just say, "Go and do it"? It's kind of like that, but it's like the seatbelt thing in the car. It just pings enough, you just put the stupid thing on, right? "Why should you go, my son?" Joab replied. "There'll be no reward for your news." Joab knows. He's telling him, if you go, this isn't going to be David isn't going to be thrilled by your news. Why you want to go and tell him this? Like, stay back. He says, "Yeah, but let me go anyway." All right, go ahead. Joab finally said, "Go ahead." So Ahimaaz took the less demanding route by way of the plain and ran to Mahanaim ahead of the Ethiopian. The Ethiopian starts out, but Ahimaaz knew a shortcut. And so Ahimaaz gets there first. David is sitting between the inner and outer gates of the town, and the watchman climbed to the roof of the gateway by the wall. Now God is dealing with David in this too, and we'll get into it next week, but look at what he says. As he looked, he saw a lone man running towards him. He shouted the news down to David, and the king replied, "If he is alone, he has news." The watchman says there's one guy coming, and he's like, well, if he's on his own and running towards us, he's got news. And you know what David is? There's one question David has. You know what that question is? What happened to Absalom? That's all he cares about. Look at what it says. The first man, as the messenger came closer, verse 26, the watchman saw another man running towards them. He shouted down, "Here comes another one." The king replied, "He will also have news." So this man, this priest's son that wanted to speak, he gets up and he says, the first man runs like Ahimaaz, son of Zadok, the watchman said. "He's a good man and comes with good news," the king replied. Oh, David, this is going to be brutal. David knows who it is now, and he's like, oh, he's a good man, and he's coming to tell me everything I want to hear. Look what happens. Then Ahimaaz cried out to the king, "Everything is all right." This is nuts. He wants to be a part of this. He's begged to be a part of this. And then when he gets in front of the king, he gets cold feet. He does not have the guts to tell David what has happened. I don't know what's up with this dude. Maybe he wanted to be a part of the story. He begs to tell. I mean, who thinks this is who wants to tell David that Absalom's dead? Send Kim. She'll be fine. This dude has begged to go. He speaks to, and David's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, everything's all right." Well, that's not true. Look, this is crazy. Look at what it says. Ahimaaz cried out, "Everything is all right." He bowed before the king with his face to the ground. "Praise to the Lord your God, who has handed over the rebels who dared to stand against my lord the king." Well, so that's true. God has defeated the rebels, and they're on the floor. And then what does David ask? What we knew he was going to ask. "What about young Absalom?" the king demanded. "Is he all right?" Why you don't want to be in this situation for 500, Alex? Like, don't be there. You don't want to be there. Ahimaaz replied, "When Joab told me to come, there was a lot of commotion, but I didn't know what was happening." Okay, that's not true. He basically bottled it and didn't want to say anything. So then And how embarrassing is this? By the way, look at this. Wait here, the king told him, so Ahimaaz stepped aside. David listens to this, and he realizes, he's like, just step aside. I mean, how embarrassing is this? I want to go to see the king. Go ahead. He gets to the king, tells a lie, gets scared. It's kind of like, you ever had your kid bug you to do something? And they finally, you say, go ahead, and then they chicken out, and you've been waiting in line for 3 hours. It's like a roller coaster or something, right? I want to ride it. Let's get in line. We wait an hour and a half, and the thing shows up. Oh, I can't do it. Like, oh, no, we just waited an hour and a half. You're getting on this thing. I don't want to. Landry did that to me once. I was on this scary ride. She jumped on me right at the last minute and left me with nobody sitting there. Like, I was like, oh, man, I'm going to get her. We're on this stupid, like, circular thing that's taking me high. And Landry, I've got video of it. She's just laughing her head off. Like, oh, man. And I should have bailed with her, but I was trying to be the strong. Yeah, I didn't want to bail out like my kid. So I was like, I'll do it. And then, man, that thing was rough. Anyway. Yeah, that was not great. So the man from Ethiopia arrived, and he said, I have good news from my lord the king. Today the Lord has rescued you from all those who rebelled against you. That's true. And then he says in verse 32, what about young what? Is he all right? And the Ethiopian replied, may all of your enemies, my lord the king, both now and in the future, share the fate of that young man. In other words, he's dead. And we'll talk about this next week, but think about this. This is why, like, fractured relationships and different things, they hurt in the end. Look at what it says. The king, David, was overcome with emotion. He went up to the room over the gateway, and this is a guy he hasn't spoke to in 2 years. And he burst into tears. And as he went, all he could say was what? Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, if only I had died instead of you. Oh, Absalom, my son, my son. Think about how devastating that was. We'll get into that next week, but that's how it ends. Absalom is dead. David finds out, and all he can say is, my son, my son, my son. One of the quick lessons of this is, sort your relationships now, before you're sitting at a funeral saying the same thing. Imagine sitting at a funeral of someone that you loved but hadn't spoken to in years. Nothing's worth all that. David has this, we'll talk about in length next week. It's crazy. And all he can say is, my son, my son. And Absalom is dead. And David can't do a thing about it. David's this weird character, right? God provides for him. But remember when God said you're going to pay for the sin? Guess what? And when he knows Absalom dies, he knows that he is partly responsible for that. Be sure your sins will find you out, right? Let's pray and we'll get into Lord, it's so easy to stand here on a Wednesday night and rail on people and say how foolish they were, Absalom and David at times and all of these things, but God, we're like that. If it wasn't for your grace and your mercy, we'd be dead on the floor. Lord, we all fight our inner man, our heart, our mind, our spirit, and we need your help. We need your trust. We need to trust you. We need to Lord, not walk against you. We need to do what you're telling us to do. We need your favor. We need your hand. We need to spot your provisions and your encouragements. And Lord, we need to do what you'd have us to do so we can walk on the right side. Lord, help us with relationships. Help us with our own selves. Lord, our biggest enemy is me, myself, and I. Help us overcome that by your word and by your spirit. And help us to look at Absalom tonight and realize that when you try to do your own thing and you won't let the inner man be healed, this is what ends up happening. Help us to look at David's life and see the torture and the pain and the agony of what his life produced sometimes. And help us to be like this one soldier that realized the fear of the Lord and not to count on blessings that weren't from you is a really good idea. There's some profound truth in that, not to fear the Lord and not anyone else, and not to trust anyone else's blessings. There's a lot in this story, Lord, but 20,000 people are dead because men would try to do their own thing. Help us not to do our own thing. It'll cost us, it'll cost others. Help us to follow you, help us to serve you, help us to be holy like you are holy, and help us to see your hand of provision and power, and help us to be the ones that say, look at what the Lord's done. Look at how, when we stood up for him, look at what he's done for us. Help us get there. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.